Alright, so we're doing a bunch of vocabulary for today. Our first word we said was polynomial. What does poly mean? Many. And nomial, what does that kind of sound like? Many numbers. So we have many terms and numbers. You got standard form, which just puts stuff in descending order. So you're going from your largest exponent to your smallest exponent. So we may have something like x squared minus 3x plus 7. Is that okay? You guys are awesome. All right, so the degree of a polynomial, that's whatever your highest exponent is. So you're going to look at your highest exponent, and whatever it is, that's your degree. So we'll say the highest exponent. So if we're looking at the polynomial that we just wrote as an example before, what's the highest exponent that we have there? 2. So your degree of that polynomial would be 2. Is that okay? All right. So the degree of each term, so if I'm talking about just one term, that would be like just x squared or just negative 3x. So the degree of a term is the sum of the degrees of each base, which is not something that you're going to have to deal with a whole lot in this class, but as you go on later in math, it may show up more when you start having more than one variable in your problems. So term, we've already talked about it a lot. It's a number, a variable, or a product of numbers and variables. Terms are going to be separated by addition or subtraction signs. So if we're looking at the example polynomial that we wrote again before, how many terms do we have there? 1, 2, 3. Is that okay? What would your second term be? This is the first term. So negative 3x would be your second term. Is that okay? So your terms are just like the little chunks, and they're separated by addition and subtraction. The last thing we're talking about is a leading coefficient. So do y'all remember that word coefficient? We talked about it like on the first day you were ever in here. Do y'all remember what that is? It's been a minute. It's the coefficient is, or excuse me, the leading coefficient is going to be the coefficient of your first term when you're written in standard form. So y'all, coefficients are just your numbers in front of your variables. So if we're talking about the leading coefficient, that is specifically the number in front of the first term, or the number with the highest exponent. So like if we're looking at our example up here, what's the number in front of the term with your highest exponent? It's not written, but what's there? 1. Is that okay? So we're going to do a lot more practice with that. So yeah, just a little bit of vocabulary for you. More of it's going to be more important like later on in your math careers. We won't do a whole lot with it in math 1. So we can classify polynomials based on 2 things. So we have like this big umbrella of polynomials, and there's a bunch of special kinds that we can group into that same category. So you can classify them based on the degree. So again, your degree is looking at your highest exponent, and then you can talk about them based on the number of terms that they have. And we're going to do both of those things today. So if your degree, if your highest exponent is a 0, we're going to call that constant. So that would be something just like the number 3 or the number 7, something without a variable at all. It's going to be constant because it's never going to change, because that variable is like times something or plus something that could change it. If your degree is 1, we're going to call that linear. So that could be something like 2x plus 1, or just x, or anything that just has an exponent of 1 on there. So again, we don't write that 1 exponent, but it's there. If it's quadratic, that means that your degree is 2. So that would be something like that first example that we wrote up here again. So your highest exponent is 2. So you could just have like 3x squared, and then you could have a bunch of other stuff going on with that as well. But again, your highest exponent is only going to be 2. If we're talking cubic, what's your highest exponent going to be? 3. That could be like x cubed minus 7x squared plus x minus 14. Could be something that crazy and long, but your highest exponent is a 3, so it's going to be cubic every time. Is that okay? And then the last one that we're going to talk about is quartic, and these are very, very rare. You won't see them often, especially not in this class. But that's meaning that your highest exponent is a 4, so that could be something like 2x to the 4th. And again, you can have a bunch of stuff after that. Or you could just have 2x to the 4th, and that'd be it. Is that okay? Do you have any questions so far? All right. So that's how you classify them based on their degree. So again, you're just looking at your highest exponent. If we're talking about what we can call them based on the number of terms, we can have a monomial. What does mono mean? One. So you just have one term. So you could have like x. And then what about a binomial? What does bi mean? So how many terms you can have? 2. So you could have like x plus 5. That's 2 terms. Yeah. Or you could have like x plus y, because there are other variables in there too. And then the last one that we're going to do is called a trinomial. So how many terms is that going to have? 3, because tri means 3, yeah? So we could have like, I don't know, x plus 2y plus 5. We got 3 terms going on. So that would be a trinomial. If we have more than 3 terms, we're just going to call it a polynomial. So anything more than 3 terms is a polynomial. So again, you've got that big umbrella that all polynomials fall under, and then these are kind of like special kinds. Does that make sense? Yes, maybe. Okay. So we are going to go through 1 through 9 down here, and we're going to talk about these expressions based on their degree and the number of terms that they have. So all your options for that are here. So, we'll do a couple together, and then I'll let you do some on your own. Does that sound okay? Maybe. We'll try it. So for number 1, based on the degree, what is your degree there? So it's the highest exponent we have on number 1. 3. So if the highest exponent is a 3, it's degree 3. What do we call it? Cubic. How many terms do we have there? 1, 2. 2 terms. So if you have 2 terms, what do we call that? Binomial. Questions on that one? Yeah, what's that? It would be, they're not going to give you something like that and ask you what it is. Did y'all hear what Haley said? Yeah, she said if you had like, what did you say, 2x plus 4x plus 3? Something like that. But she's saying like if we could combine these, would this still be a trinomial, or is it considered a binomial? As written, it's a trinomial because there's 3 terms. If you combine your like terms, then that would become a binomial, but they wouldn't give you something like that and then ask you what it was. Does that make sense? You're probably not going to have a question on the EOC that's like, hey, is this expression of what kind of is this? Is it a monomial, binomial, trinomial? They're not going to ask you that, but you've got to understand this stuff to apply all the stuff we're going to learn later. Does that make sense? So, yeah. Can we try another one? Do we have any other questions right now? Right. So looking at number 2, what's our highest exponent there? Is it 1 or 2? 2. So if your highest exponent is a 2, your degree is 2. What do we call that? Quadratic. And how many terms do we have there? 2. So what do we call that if it has 2 terms? Binomial. What about number 3? Why is that constant? It's just the number, right? There's no x on it with like a exponent at all. So it's just constant. And then how many terms do we have there? Just 1. So what do we call that if you only have 1 term? Monomial. So then what would number 4 be? Exact same thing. Constant monomial. Now, let me finish writing this one. Are y'all okay to skip to number 7? Okay, so looking at number 7, what's your highest exponent that you can see? 4. And what did we say that would be called if it was fourth? Quartic is that word there? You may also hear it called fourth degree. So I'm okay with either one there. Whatever you want to put is fine. Q-U-A-R-T-I-C or fourth. And then how many terms do we have? So what do we call it when you have 3 terms? Trinomial. Do you want to try the others on your own real quick? I think y'all are already there. Alright, so Natalie, for number 5, what's our highest exponent? 2. So what do we call it when your highest exponent is 2? Quadratic. And then, Jacob, how many terms do we have? So what do we call it with 3 terms? Trinomial. Austin, for number 6, what's our highest exponent? 2. So what do we call it when our highest exponent is 2? Quadratic. And Sierra, how many terms do we have there in number 6? 2. So what do we call it when you have 2 terms, yeah? Binomial. Thomas, for number 7, or not 7, 8, what's our highest exponent on number 8? 2. So when your highest exponent is a 2, what do we call it? Quadratic. Julia, how many terms do we have there? So what do we call that? Binomial. Ashley, what's our highest exponent in number 9? Ashley? 4? Yep. So what do we want to call that? Do y'all like quartic or fourth degree? Quartic, y'all like sounding fancy. Again, either way there is fine. You'll see it both ways. And Sonia, how many terms do we have? 1. So what do we call it when you have 1 term, y'all? Monomial. M-O-N-O-M-O. Questions on any of those? We all right? Awesome. So we are going to go on to the notes that you picked up on the way in. And most of this, y'all, we've already talked about. So the top says a polynomial is an expression made up of a monomial, we'll put there, M-O-N-O-M-O-A, or the sum or difference of monomials. So it could be 1 term or it could be a bunch of terms. Remember we said polynomial is kind of like that umbrella that all these other things are going to fall under. Says it can be named based on its number of terms and its degree, which we already talked about all of that stuff. So for the first one it's got here, the degree is 1. Do y'all agree? Yes. So what would we call it, considering that it's degree 1? Linear. That means it looks like a line, right? If we were to graph this, we'd start at 2 and count your slope up 3/1. going to make a line. Yeah? So that's why it's called linear. How many terms do we have here? 2. So what do we call that? Binomial. Is that okay? All right, looking at the next one. What's the degree there? 2. So that would be called quadratic. It says it has 3 terms. Y'all agree with that? Yes. So what do we call it if it has 3 terms? Trinomial. Looking at the next one, we have 6z to the 3rd. So your degree there, they say it's 3. Do y'all agree? Y'all agree with the degree? What do we call it based on the fact that it's degree 3? Cubic. How many terms does it have? 1, which is why it's called a monomial. Looking at the next one, what's our highest exponent? 4, so it's 4th degree, or what was that other word we talked about? Quartic, and y'all are fancy, so you like that one. Q-A-R-T-I-C. And then it says it has 3 terms. Do y'all agree with that? Yep, so what do we call it? Trinomial. Then we have just the number 7. So it's constant. The degree is 0. And how many terms do we have? 1, so it's a monomial. Now the last one that you've got down here is kind of punched out. That's supposed to say 2x squared y squared minus 3xy. It says that the degree is 4. Do y'all see a 4 anywhere there? We haven't done one like this before, but do you remember back on our notes, we said the degree is the sum of the degrees of each base. So for each term, it's the sum of the degrees of each base. So you added those 2's together from the x and y, and that gave us 4. Is that okay? And that's bigger than if we added like 1 plus 1. So that's why they went with the 4 instead of the 2. Does that make any sense? Again, you will not have to do that very often in this class at all. Like, this may be the only time. So if its degree is 4, what do we call it? Quartic, or 4th degree. How many terms do we have? 2. So what do we call that? Binomial. Do you have any questions right now? Alright, so what I want you to do, don't do yet. We're going to flip over to the back, and we're going to see who can fill out the back the fastest. Y'all ready? It's all the stuff that we just did. Go, 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 go.